Missed an episode of your favorite pod?
This top nothing new to Flow of Wisdom. And, I pretty much pride myself on shining light on darkness, and that's what we're going to do today. My guest, Russ Dizdar, he's an ordained minister, former police chaplain, dealing with occult satanic crimes. In 1982, he founded Shatter the Darkness, which is his website, shatterthedarkness.net. Russ has studied at Cumberland College Biblical Studies, the University of Akron in criminology and military science, 2.5 years at Moody Bible School, and in 1984 at Malone College, went through graduating services for a bachelor's in religion and philosophy with advanced studies in theology, apologetics, and Greek. I want to welcome for the first time the Flow of Wisdom Radio, Russ Dizdar. How are you today, Russ?
I appreciate being here for the first time. Thank you.
Good to have you, Russ. There's a lot of different things I like to cover, so we have time, but I don't want to waste any at all. For my listeners, how did you get, basically what it is that you're doing right now, and explain, because you could probably explain it better than I can to my listeners. What is it exactly that you do right now?
Well, right now, the front line of what we do is evangelism, in the sense that we're just reaching the world for Christ. But in the context, though, of what we've dealt with in 35 years, underground Satanism, the satanic ritual abuse, mind control, tracking it, dealing with the healing of their lives and helping victims, but also dealing with the perpetrators. So we do deal with, not only is the research side of what we do, it is massively ongoing, but dealing with the astounding numbers of victims, tracking where it all started and what it's all about. It's led us to Europe and so forth. So when we talk about what we do, we do evangelism in the context engaging some of the darkest side of things, involving satanic crimes also, and then the organized level of it on a global scale.
Now, you said satanic crimes. You've been involved with this, as you stated, 35 years. Have you noticed a difference or progression of the type of satanic crimes that you've been able to witness since your beginning of your ministry 30 plus years ago up until now, or is this something that is consistently the same?
No, Sean. I think in 1975 I became a believer, and I came out of the world of New Age and other spiritual things. So I came out of something that was real but was not of God. But when I came to Christ and then began to get into ministry, there's no question that we began to engage with individuals that, there was a rise. Even at that 1975, the New Age movement had grown into the tens of millions. Underground Satanism was developing, but most did not know this. The Church of Satan, the Satanic Bible, was released, I think, in 1969, Anton LaVey. And so the popular side of Satanism began to grow in major ways. The rise of Wicca, and Druidism and just about everything else, that we're seeing now began to really unleash in the 60s. So when we began to deal with individuals in the 70s, mid-70s, late 70s, we ran into individual young people. We were targeting young people in high schools because that's the work we were doing at the time. And so when we engaged young people like dabblers or experimenters in Satanism, we, would find out that they had books they were given them by adults, so they were taken to meetings, and we just kept following that trail. And in that trail, we found more and more victims. But in those days of some of the most serious victims when it involved a crime, 1978, 1980, the numbers of individuals beginning to come up and come into the psych wards and counseling centers all across the United States, it began to develop in the 80s. What nobody had an idea that it would move into the millions. And so as this whole unleashing of people showing up, by 1992, Holly Hector from Centennial Hospital in Denver estimated 2.5 million cases. Now, this involves the sexual, physical, mental abuse, the splitting of personality, sophisticated programming, demonization, ancient rituals. Now you're having tens of thousands in the 80s show up. So law enforcement they began to develop response teams, occult crime detectives, occult crime police training. In the academies, they began to unleash, train individuals to understand the symbols, the signs, the motivations. Because, one book called Crime Warps in the late 1980s, predicted in the 1990s would be the fastest or the broadest crime element would be satanic crimes. Mm-hmm. And so there was. And that's continued. But if you want to talk about increasing, there's no question on the increased level on all levels.
Let me jump in real quick. Real quick, Russ. I'm sorry.
Sure.
You mentioned that these police academies now, the police departments now are creating, they have created divisions devoted strictly for occult crimes or satanic crimes. And you were involved with that, right? Am I right?
Absolutely. And because when we were first dealing with victims, and then we began to help them, we had, like our house got attacked, phone calls with strange languages began to come up. A couple of churches we know got desecrated. Threats began to show up. So we began to interact with some law enforcement, and we began to do training sessions and teaching others all about it. Well, a local law enforcement chief sent one of their lieutenants over to our training, and then they recruited me to come in to their academy. And a couple of things happened. One, there were law enforcement individuals. One of those his name was Tom Wedge. He wrote a book called The Satan Hunter. Now, that was written specifically for law enforcement only. And we kind of just providentially met him, and he took us in under his wing a little bit and took us down to Opata, the police academy in southern Ohio, and other places. And so we began to be taken into where they were doing the training for law enforcement and others. And then I got I got recruited into the local police department to just be there to be helpful and to the officers. But the main issue was they wanted to get me in there so that into their actual academy under their wing and teach on this subject, because they created an occult satanic crime course.
And what year was this, Russ?
That would have been in the time that we got involved with the training with Tom Wedge we were taking this probably between 1990, 89, 94, and then I was taken into the police department probably in 1996, somewhere right around there. And I was there for a few years, and then we formed, and here's what happened, Sean. We formed back in the 1980s. I formed a little group called SIIU, Shatter Intervention Investigative Unit. Now, that's the main part of what we do, including having people that we've recruited that are private investigators, retired law enforcement, and so we have been tracking and investigating and going after the underground, because one of the reasons we wanted to verify if it's true. The stories were bizarre. The stories were, just astounding stories of the underground. So back as far as the 80s, quietly, we began to track in every victim. We wanted to go after the information. Well, then that led us again to Tom Wedge, to the academies, and then our involvement in the academy. And since we left there, I think it was close to 70 or 98, 99. We pushed forward with our own SII unit because we had, and there's a difference about how law enforcement reacts to satanic occult crimes, and you have to be specialized. So we've continued on our own, but we have engaged departments, the feds, turned state's evidence, and so forth.
How did the police respond to certain crime scenes back then? We have about less than 2 minutes till we go to our first break.
Sure. A quick one is, if everybody, this is a national story. Jeffrey Dahmer, they find him in Wisconsin. He did all the things he became a cannibal. He was killing people. Well, what they did not tell you is that he had an altar built out of human thigh bones, a satanic altar. That he had a power cone built out of human skulls. That he had satanic books. That he himself what was called he was a multiple. He had multiple personality, and that's a primary issue in underground Satanism. So that, if you look at the public unleashing of that and the investigative side of that, they nixed all of the satanic side of it. We got to see the actual inside crime scene pictures, and that's what I'm saying about many of the cases throughout the last 20 years, 2 decades. They just don't have the criminalistics nor the forensic psychology or the grid to understand the motivations and the signs and symbols of satanic crime.
Gotcha. Russ Dizdar is my guest, ordained minister, former police chaplain, and we're talking about occult satanic crimes. Russ, when we come back from this break, I want you to describe your first crime scene that you've seen, a occult satanic crime scene, what that was like and what all you've seen. We'll be back right after these messages, guys. I'm Sean Anthony. You're listening to Flow of Wisdom Radio. I want to make sure that Russ is able to hear me and I'm able to hear him good. But yeah, Russ, before the break, I was asking you a question about, the crime scenes. If you could describe, this is a short segment here, about 5 minutes or so, but if you can describe what a crime scene looked like when you first started in this field, if you will, what was it that you seen?
Well, sure. I'll give 2 quick ones. One, a 13-year-old girl that we had to go visit in the psych ward. She eventually led us to a barn down in a kind of secluded area. The most that we found there was a dog that had been ritually used in the back of a barn area. Now, that was just, something very slight, but she had remembered where they took her and what occurred. Now, another one of these crime scenes was a bigger, broader one. 2 girls were killed, one on satanic revels, one on demon revels. Both girls, in the area, there was a green small gas building where they had 2 bloody handprints. Whether that was paint or blood, we weren't sure at the beginning. But it said sacrifice tonight, and then there was a sign a little further away. It said 2 must die. Now, the scenes there were afterwards, where the girls that had been stabbed 70, 80, 90 times, sexually, ritually abused, and then killed. You're talking about very horrific crime scenes. In other cases, you have one that we had gotten involved with where the same thing, stabbed over 100 times, sexually abused in a ritual called the Hands of Glory in September, but the hands were cut off in the end. And law enforcement here in Akron they've never found the hands. So they're pretty horrific, and when you look at some of these crimes, you have to look at is a tongue cut out, is a hand, a left hand cut off, is there symbols carved into the body, and was it done and a big issue was it done on a ritual date? They're pretty horrific, Sean, to talk about and to say, including little kids.
I can only imagine. What are some of the and real quick side note, my studio, I can hear, I'm getting sound in my headphones. But Russ, what are some of the you mentioned dates and things like that. What are some things of significance, like tongue cut out, and what significance is that if the left hand is cut off?
Sure. There's the left-hand path issue. There's also like a tongue being cut out. May have to do with this is somebody who began to tell the secrets. There's also a thing called the satanic justice symbol that could be carved into or burned into the body. And so in again, criminalistics, law enforcement, you're looking for motivations, and you're looking for what's there. What if you find black candles or green candles or a pentagram? What if you find these strange-looking languages written in a circle around the body, or an altar that has knives, candles, and so forth? So you got to look at a number of things, but then what we did know back in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, the calendar, there's actual specific dates that major rituals are done. Now, you can go on the web and you can find that. The Satanic ritual abuse calendar. Anybody can look it up now. You'll see the numbers of rituals. We have one that's going to occur tonight. They just had Walpurgis one the 25th of this month. We have one of our workers is interacting with a victim up north of me because they're going to be taken to this ritual, and they're trying to get them help. And it's this one tonight is Eichstack. It is going to involve blood ritual, whereas the 25th involved human sacrifice. Many of them deal with just sexual rituals, blood rituals, animal rituals. Each one is for different purposes. But the astounding numbers of them, Sean, is the big thing we can talk about at some point, because the growth of the numbers of victims, when you take one step back, who created the victims are the ones who have handed down the ancient rituals and are involving them, and they're in every single state and in every single city in the United States.
Wow, that's amazing. You answered the question I was going to ask, like where specifically are these things taking place, but you answered it. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we have more time. I want you to expand on some of the things that you mentioned, but in addition to that, this satanic ritual abuse, you mentioned some dates as well, and I want to tie that into some previous interviews that I've had with people that have been programmed and that were in the occult. We'll be right back. This is Flow of Wisdom. The Flow of Wisdom Radio. I am your host, Sean Anthony. The toll-free number to call in is 1-877-300-7645. That's 877-300-7645. My guest, Russ Dizdar, ordained minister, joining us, talking about occult satanic crimes. Russ, before the break, you mentioned quite a few things, and I thought it's very interesting because the reason why I've interviewed previous guests numerous times on this show that were programmed, that were in the occult, and upon booking you for this interview today, I've researched and listened to some previous interviews you've done. And something that I want to talk about coming up later on in the show is the fact about programming people and mind control. But before we get into that, talk a little bit more about the satanic ritual abuse that you were mentioning. You said that there are dates. There's a satanic ritual calendar. Today is a date that involves rituals. What are some of these things that, because we need to expose these things, because let's just think. Someone could be listening to this show live right now in whatever city you're listening to it in, and could be going through some things right now, and they're trying to get out. They don't know how to get out. Or someone knows someone that's going through some things, or may notice some things about a personal friend of theirs, and it's kind of sticking out to them. And what are some things that people need to look for that could be in being abused in a satanic with rituals involved?
Sure, thanks. There's many that have been, eventually become aware that something's wrong. They hear voices inside. They have dreams. They have missing time, and they begin to go to counselors, and then begin all of what's been going on from the inside begins to come out. Now, as we track this, and we've got 30 years or more tracking it, dealing with the healing of it, going backwards. Here's in all the cases of satanic ritual abuse, in all of them, it begins with selection prior to birth, where the individuals that are going to create the baby are pretty much spiritually, demonically, satanically, in the dark sense, selected to breed, and then to have to be bred into the coven system, into the system. So we might look at it as satanic and evil and wrong and all this. Getting their mindset, they look at it as they're creating a superior race. By having a mother and father, that are part of this whole thing, they believe they have pure blood. That is, in our view, would be charged, demonically empowered, bloodline where the mom and dad then create, or the man and woman, they don't even have to be married, create another offspring. That offspring is considered and called a chosen one or a select one. There are rituals that are done prior to the actual act of sexual act. There are rituals that are done while the fetus is in the womb, to try to demonize the fetus, to, if you think in terms, and again, their terms, whether we believe this or not, they believe they're kind of injecting dark presence and power into the development of DNA. They want an altered, in their view, a superior being. Very much like the Hitler, because this all goes back to Hitler and Himmler and the creation of master race. All of modern-day satanic ritual abuse goes back to that very, that's the origin. So with the tens of thousands of victims, and maybe some that are listening right now, the origins of this is that they were born into it. They were meant to be altered from the beginning. The satanic view, or the Luciferian view, they believe they're heightening them. They're creating a superior human. Now, this will involve, the demonization in the selection, then the trauma. Everybody knows that multiple personality disorder, or what they call now DID, dissociative identity disorder, that's all caused by trauma. You literally split the personality, and you create a sub-personality. Then you create another one and another one. Now, in the splitter programmer's job, they're to not only split and create the altered sub-personality, they then program it, begin to tell it what it's going to be, begin to give it a name, and they devise an entire agenda for one other sub-personality. The best way to think of it is watching a hypnotist on television when they hypnotize somebody and make them do something that they actually don't even know they're doing. Well, This is permanent. They're creating an altered state with a sub-personality, and then ultimately, Sean, they demonize personality. They train that one up through the years. They can be trained, created and programmed and demonized to carry out rituals, to carry out assassination, to carry out sexual, things. Yeah. You can have hundreds of sub-personalities in one person.
They've actually shown this on TV about the hypnosis, putting people under a particular spell, not even knowing what they've been programmed to do, and then they've been, hypnotized to carry out a particular act when triggered by whatever it is, a word, a phrase, whatever it is that they decide to come up with to trigger that person to carry out that act. All this is interesting, and I've had guests on that shared stories with me, similar to what you're saying, as far as their father was a full-blown Luciferian, and just full-blown Satanist, followed the doctrine of Luciferianism, and took the child, they were a child at that time, and had them perform just horrible sexual acts on them, broke them down mentally, and then reprogrammed them to a different personality. And you're explaining it a lot better, to give understanding, I guess, to create this multiple personality. Do they do this in the military, which I'm pretty certain of the answer, but if so, what is it that, can you share how this is tied into the military and what they're doing with some of our troops involving MK Ultra?
Absolutely, and it's a vital issue because very secretive programs within the originally in the CIA and it has gone into other departments in U.S. military. Now, there's no question in Monarch, MK Ultra, and numbers of the projects. The victims on a military, that was military victims that have come to us. So we've engaged in every single one of them. They have highly trained assassin shooter personalities that are extremely trained and versed in weapons and so forth. Now, I know that there's been a lot of, like we look at Holmes that did the shootings at the Aurora Theater in Colorado, and we look at Jared. We look from a distance. Now, I don't have them in front of me, but from a distance, I see them, without question, having all the marks of that the sub-personalities that were created, that were programmed, were the ones that did the actual shootings and killings. And then when it was over, usually they have suicide programming, but they didn't kill themselves. They got caught. And then, the next day, the sub-personality goes down, the main person comes back, and they have no cognitive memory. Even if you do a lie detector test, they have no memory in the main or the personality that did not do the actual crime. shooting. So in U.S. military, and here's the big factor, it's not just speculation, it's not conspiracy. The whole issue of Manchurian Candidate goes all the way back to 1943, 1945, when the then considered worldwide renowned psychologist G.H. Estabrook. Now, he was hired by U.S. military. He was world-renowned, I believe in the evil way, but he was world-renowned. He was the head of the Psychological Association. He was written many books. I got a hold of one of his books. I got 2 copies of it now. You can barely get them. In one of the chapters, the title of the book is Hypnosis, but in one chapter he describes the weaponization, and he details how they learned how to create subpersonalities, multiple personalities in U.S. soldiers, to where the main people would be split, and they would create a separate personality inside of him, and that he would be amnesic. He didn't know that he had this, so the handlers or programmers that would do this in military would create inside of them another personality. Now, again, not my information, but G.H. Estabrook, hired by U.S. military, describes in that chapter, Sean, that they were successful at doing it, creating subpersonalities that could be programmed and given a code. They could make assassin shooters. They could make reconnaissance agents, spies, subpersonalities that would be spies. They can create subpersonalities and send the person in to sow disinformation. So this is all explained by a U.S. military-hired psychologist in the project. So we hear about MKUltra, Monarch, and all that kind of stuff. But if you step back a little further and look at the content of this one individual, he describes not only that they became successful at doing military, but in that chapter, he says what we need to do is create these kind of super soldiers in all departments of U.S. military, so that in the future we can have a 5th column of hidden super soldiers. That's in G.H. Estabrook's book called Hypnotism on the weaponization of the process, published in 1947. They absolutely knew how to do this all the way back then.
Russ, recently I've been covering the topic of targeted individuals. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but the people that are coming out speaking that they're being gang stalked and they're being targeted, they're being attacked with low frequency waves, electromagnetic waves, and weapons that can't be seen. Do you think that has a part of this whole satanic element of the military, or is this something totally different?
No, I think it's all a part of the same, because again, when you go to the roots of it, Himmler and Hitler was, the real history tells us in the World War II, the real history shows that they wanted to create a master race. So they began a selection process, and they had a secret project called Lebensborn to create hundreds and thousands selectively bred that they would back them to become the Aryans, or we've heard the term the God Men.
Right. Hang tight, Russ. I'm sorry.
Way back there.
Yeah, this is really good. We're going to take a quick break. This is really getting deep. His website is shatterthedarkness.net. We'll be right back on Flow of Wisdom.
Imagine going up to 100,000 miles without ever getting an oil change. Hi, I'm Sean Anthony, host of Flow of Wisdom Radio.
Welcome back to Flow of Wisdom Radio. I am your host, Sean Anthony. My website is flowofwisdom.com. Toll-free number to call is 877-300-7645. Stick around, because hour 2, we're going to continue this discussion. But not only that, we're going to go a little deeper than what we've already covered thus far. My guest, Russ Dizdar, his website is shatterthedarkness.net. Shatterthedarkness.net. Be sure to check it out. It's informative. He has MP3s, different classes, courses, and everything that, and all that he's doing to educate you and yours. So please go ahead and check that out. Russ, this is a short segment as we close up this hour, getting ready for hour 2. But what are some indicators of someone who is programmed?
Sure. Well, as far as them finding out, because in our work with all of them, I believe that half of all of them out there are intact. And Sean, what I mean by that is that they don't even know yet. They're created with the subpersonalities of programming with the idea that the upfront person is to be amnesic. They're created so the upfront person does not know, so that when a handler or a coven member or a military handler would give a trigger code, the subpersonality that is programmed and trained to respond to it will pop up, pushing the main person down, and they'll do the task, whatever they're tasked to do. Now, how do they know? Part of the issue of them learning, figuring out what's going on with them, they begin to hear voices inside, conversations inside their head. When they're younger, they think it's all normal until they realize most people don't have that. So they have conversations in their head. They know there's other voices in there. Second, they may begin to have dreams and flashes of really horrific, rituals and really horrific things. They don't know where they've come from. A third indicator would be they begin to realize they're missing time. Maybe they get off of work at 4 o'clock, they're driving home, but they don't get home until 8 o'clock. And it's only a half-hour drive, and they don't know where they were. They don't know what happened in the last 3.5 hours. Or they went to bed in their pajamas. They woke up the next morning, they're in their blue jeans, they got, cuts on themselves. They're tired, and they don't know how what occurred. Missing time is a big element because when another personality is triggered to come up, the main person is down and is not cognitive. They don't know what's going on, so they're really missing the time. The person that has been brought up to do shooting, to do a ritual, to go do something else, may do something for 2, 3, 4 hours, then go down. The main person comes back. They have no memory, but the memory is down in there somewhere. Now, in observing individuals like this, that's why I say in observing program shooters, in my observation, I believe the VTech shooter was programmed. I believe that Holmes in Colorado and Jared in Arizona had some parts programmed that did what they did. But that's the observation. In programmed individuals, multiple, there's an issue with the eyes. It takes somebody a while to really observe this and know this. If you work with, those who have programmed subparts, you'll be able to see this and observe this over time. You can detect if you realize. If you, as a husband or wife, has a spouse that all of a sudden you don't know where they're at on the weekends for a couple hours, or phone calls come in and you answer and they hang up all the time. Or you begin to notice that your spouse seems to be, switches or completely becomes another person. Then there's some indicators that you have, you tissue down inside. But those in every single SRA, multiple, whether military or pure coven, the same elements of program personalities, specified programming for either assassins or shooters or whatever.
That's interesting. You said issues with the eyes, which ties into something I want to bring up in the next hour, the movie Eyes Wide Shut. Plus, when we come back from this break, in hour number 2, I want you to share some stories. You've been in some dangerous situations throughout your 30-plus years in this field. My guest, Russ Dizdar, his website, shatterthedarkness.net. We're going to be back 6 minutes past the top of the hour with hour 2 on Flow of Wisdom. We'll be right back. That's right, get motivated. Welcome to hour 2 of Flow of Wisdom Radio. I am your host, Sean Anthony, and I'm very excited for you guys to join me. We're listening, for those that are listening live on GCNlive.com. Give me 1 second here. My guest, Russ Dizdar, he's an ordained minister, former police chaplain. He deals with occult satanic crimes. Founded in 1982 with Shatter the Darkness. That is his website, shatterthedarkness.net. Be sure to check it out. And if you guys missed hour 1, please go back and listen to it. Download it on GCNlive.com and share it with others because it's very interesting. But I guarantee you it's going to get even more interesting. I want to share this story that came out in the news. This was last year, and I'm going to read from theblaze.com, Russ. A real-life demon possession is being reported in Indiana. The details are almost too horrifying to believe. The Blaze quotes. It says, a terrified mother claims she watched in horror as her demon-possessed 9-year-old son walked backwards up a wall and ceiling. Her claims would be easy to dismiss if a child services caseworker and a nurse weren't reportedly there to witness it all. Latoya Ammons claims all 3 of her children showed signs of being possessed, including evil smiles and strangely deep voices, the Indianapolis Star reports. The mother says she also witnessed her 12-year-old daughter levitating in their Gary, Indiana home. Now, Russ, you've been in this field for 30 plus years. Have you witnessed things that this article is claiming?
Absolutely, yes. And it's interesting you quote that. When we heard about it, so I took a team and we prayed it up, and we drove 6 hours to that very house. We went right there after the fact. We wanted to engage the family to help them. We got there at midnight. It was snowing very heavily. There were about 25, 30 people out just as curiosity seekers. The law enforcement agent in front of the house said that the family had left the house. Now, Zach, who is part of the paranormal, ghost hunter TV show, he purchased the house, and he's doing a film that's coming out very shortly. There's individuals demonized that we've dealt with for years. We can talk about how the demons speak to them, what they do, throw them down, harm them, just like you see in the Bible times. Bizarre occurrences, though, in houses, smells, the very feeling of them when they manifest in a person, the incredible, radical, very, very sadistic, level of evil that comes through. I mean, demons are what they are. They are radically evil, and that's their pure nature. And when they get in a person, when they begin to operate through a person, and they don't care whether it's a kid, they have no mercy. You got to remember, that's the other side. There is no sense of mercy. Some of the rituals are called demonic revels or Satan revels. They revel in the blood, the harm, the destruction, and then also in the midst of that, blaspheming God. So through the years, sure, we have had hundreds of cases of deliverance. And
well, you said you went to that home in Indiana, according to the article that I just read. What did you see when you first got there? Like, walk us through what you seen when you first went to there. Were you able to go inside the home? Did you meet the family, the kids?
Right. No, they did not. When we got there, it was late. It was after the stories came out all over the nation on it. And so we just felt led, and we felt like we should go. And so we on one of our regular things we do on a weekend, we call it a reap trip. We went there. We drove there, and we got our own hotel, and we went down to the actual house. We got to the house about 11:30 at night. It was snowing. The weird thing was there were about 25 to 30 people, half of them standing out in the snow just in front of the house, only as curiosity seekers, wanting to know about what's going on there. They wanted to come to see if they would see something. Some began to ask us questions like, once they knew who we were, do you think we can be demonized just being here and so forth? Well, what occurred was the family had been moved out. And the police officer was there in front of the house, unmarked car, but he was there to keep anybody from going to the door, so we weren't allowed to go to the door. But we did get a hold of the priest that actually did the Catholic version of exorcism in the house and with the people. We met the next day at his own home at a Catholic church building. He invited us in. We talked to him for a couple of hours, what he saw, what he experienced, what he did. And he tells all the exact same stories that you heard about, the articles tell you about, what he saw, and he has no question that there were demons in the house, demons in the kids, very powerful. He wasn't sure the reasons why, whether there was some kind of occult rituals that had been done in the home. But that's as far as we got. Nobody would give us the location of and we offered it. We offered it to the priest. We offered it to the law enforcement agent that if we could actually get to the family, we'd love to help them. But they had already been pulled out of the area.
What were some things that for example, your first time you witnessed anything, a child or a person being levitated, paint that picture for us. I mean, because some people, it sounds like something out of a horror film. And this is one of the reasons why I stay away from those horror films, because, I know the reality of them and where they come from, But, for people that are out there listening, like, oh, come on, Sean, you can't be serious. This is not real. Let us know what you've seen with your own eyes.
Sure. I mean, the thing that we see over and over, I mean, there's a number of things, that can really be crazy that occurs, but the normal things that occur that are very strange, and it does scare people, whether it's been on the streets, in a bar, in a church, wherever. Here, in a demonized person or possessed person, there's no question let's go over some of the elements. There is this sense of feeling. Like, I'm a believer in Christ. I feel the power of God. I know His presence. But I also know the other side by being around individuals that would manifest that demonic presence. So there's a presence issue that you feel, the radical evil in the air. You feel it on coming off the person. And then if the demon comes all the way up and begins to use their mouth, begins to look through their eyes, or even attempts to use their hands or body to attack somebody. Now, we've seen that, again, just that alone, dozens and dozens. I don't even know how many times now that we've seen that. And when you see a demon take over a person, it's unnatural. It's without question, you look at the eyes, they're blackened out. The demon itself is actually looking through the physical eyeball. And the very sense and demeanor of radical evil, the whole face depicts radical evil. And of course, if the demon knows you're a real believer in Christ, and if you have the Spirit of God in you, then that demon is ready to try to scare you, try to back you off, wants to blaspheme God, wants to do a lot of things. And in some cases, when people aren't prepared, if they have enough control of the body, they might use the body. The demon itself may use the body to attack a person.
How have you been attacked before?
Well, in beginning times, they lunge forward to, one of the things is they lunge forward to bite it, literally sink their teeth into you. That's something you got to really be careful with, because if you don't take charge of a situation and deliverance right away, when the demon is actually manifesting, that means fully taking hold of the whole of the personality and coming through. It's very clear they can try to come at you with their hands. It's almost like the body manifests the physical or the attributes of the demon itself. The hands look like claw, like they're going to claw you, try to reach out and scrape your face. So these are things that we learned in the beginning the hard way. Then we learned how to take charge, command them in Jesus' name, and order them that they would not do this. And again, they have to comply. But that's some of the things they can do. They can also, that when you begin to command them to come out, if there's other people that are part of the family or a coven or that may have been also open to demons, the demon can jump out of that person and transfer into the other. So there's a lot of things that can happen in an actual deliverance where the demon is fully manifested. We've seen them try to run out a door. We've seen them. Now, here's the weirdest one, Sean. What I've seen. This is probably the weirdest. In a blonde-haired girl, 2 or 3 of us are standing around. This demonic presence began to come up, and you can tell in the eyes where there's a switch in the face, the contortion of the face, and it was as if nobody was there, but as if somebody came up behind the person, lifted them off the ground, thrust them sideways, and then slammed them. Like in the big-time wrestling, if you see them take somebody up and put them sideways and throw them to the ground, slamming them to the ground. But physically, there's nobody there. But spiritually, again, this is how real they are. They are real entities with those abilities. And just like you read in the Bible where people were thrown to the ground or the demon tries to throw them into the fire, that's exactly what can happen when they manifest fully like that. And it can be very bizarre. And then there's also, they can speak in other languages.
Yeah, let's we're going to pick up on that. We're going to take a quick break. Russ Dizdar giving us some very this dark information, but I think we need to shed light on it. Shatterthedarkness.net is his website. I'm Sean Anthony. This is Flow of Wisdom. We'll be right back. Flow of Wisdom Radio. I am your host, Sean Anthony. We do the show live every Sunday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please spread the word. The toll-free number to call is 877-300-7645. My guest, Russ Dizdar. Russ, before the break, you were mentioning the fact that some of these demonic possessed people will speak in other languages. Please continue about that. What other languages will you hear some of these demonic possessed people speak?
Sure. I mean, in hearing them, you just, you think, it's obvious it's not, it is a different language, and it doesn't sound like German, it doesn't sound like Spanish, it doesn't sound like Russian. So there is that, and the problem with it is you don't know what they're saying. It could be the summoning of another demon, it could be the release of a curse.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you said the problem is you know what they're saying?
Oh, that if you don't know what they're saying.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. If you don't know the problem is when all of a sudden the demon manifests in a person, and all of a sudden this language starts coming out, starts being spoken. Mm-hmm. Speaking English, I don't know what they're saying. Right. And if you let it go on, here's the problem. It could be that they're cursing you. It could be that they're summoning other demons to come and help. So, it's a very important issue to deal with in deliverance. Some have called this in the underground twilight language, or the language of the demons. There are those who are practitioners. They know this language. They're empowered demonically to be able to speak and summon and call. And so it's directly given by the demonic and directly inspired by a demon, if not the demon speaking itself. So you got to be very careful with it, because they can counterfeit. Like in the body of Christ, they have the charismatic gift of speaking in other languages. Well, they can counterfeit that, and so there has to be a discernment even within the body, because Satanists that are high practitioners, they know how to infiltrate. One of the tactics is when they infiltrate a church, they will use that to where if nobody checks, if there's no discernment or no demand of interpretation of the tongues or languages spoken, then it's very possible, and the Satanist would intend to release curses, to release blasphemies against God right in a local service. That's dangerous.
That's dangerous when you talk about that, and that's probably happening very often. Often right now. I've like I said before, certain guests I've interviewed, they told me that the churches have been infiltrated. Can you speak on that briefly before we go to a break here?
Sure. I mean, they're right. If when it comes to the satanic ritual abuse side, that side of things, those that have been raised up in it, those who have been working with the victims, they know very very clearly. Now, we've done training. We put it out. It's all free on our site on this very issue of infiltration and the certain indicators of it. But I've had them talk to us directly and say, Russ, what we do is we'll go in, and during the worship time, and when everybody's just freely unleashing worship, we'll begin to unleash in our own language, but we're going to be cursing the people. We're going to seek to be unleashing demonic presence in the service, and it's a highly trained thing. I haven't met, in all these years, the SRAs that I've met have programmed, demonized, coven-loyal personalities that know how to do this. And so it's designed. It's not an accident. It's designed as they come into churches to create this.
Wow. That is amazing. We gotta figure out how to expose that even more, because so many people are being deceived, especially nowadays in these times that we live in, which I do believe we're in those last days. So much false prophets are going before congregations, and false teachings is being taught. And then when you talk about this, people infiltrating the church, speaking in an unknown tongue, disguising it as, you know, like there's praying in the spirit. And the key word that you said is discernment. You got to have discernment. We're going to take a break here because this was a short segment. But when we come back, Russ, I want to talk about some of the movies. You know, I've been in the entertainment business, you know, in this whole radio industry for quite some time, and I've been around the entertainment industry, and I've seen what goes on. But one of the movies that kind of talks about, it really showcases a lot of what you expose, is the movie Eyes Wide Shut. And I want to, when we come back, I want you to talk about other movies that you know for a fact that reveal some of these demonic secrets that's right in front of our faces. We'll be right back, guys. This is Flow of Wisdom Radio. Welcome back to Flow of Wisdom Radio. I'm your host, Sean Anthony. We are live on the Genesis Communications Network. We do this show live every Sunday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My guest, Russ Dizdar, says some pretty remarkable things. You said that the churches, of course, in fact, have been infiltrated, and that oftentimes these people, these demon-possessed people will come into churches, and during their worship, they'll be praying or speaking in an unknown tongue, cursing the congregation and or releasing demonic spirits. Please continue expanding on that if you can, and what, you know, if you have any cases that, you know, you can refer to, please do share.
Sure, I could say a couple of things. And a lot of the deliverance we've done, where this demonic language from a demon is in a person, when we cast the demon out, the language goes. So it's associated with the actual presence of the demon. And it can be done when the demon manifests, or it can be done through a sub-personality that has the demon in them. They can speak it almost at will, it seems like, but it is the demonic presence. Now, I did a seminar up in Massachusetts years ago. One of the friends that I met up in a church up there where we did this said, Russ, something really weird occurred. When you left, we had a man show up at the service the very next Sunday morning, and this is what he said. I was standing there praying, and we have an open time of prayer and worship during our service, and I thought I heard somebody speaking in tongues, speaking in languages behind me, but it seemed evil, it seemed wrong, and then it seemed like I heard them cursing God. And so I stopped myself, you know, from doing anything. I began to pray. They did it again, and it seemed like they were cursing Jesus and cursing God. So he told his wife about it. He called me. I said, well, next week, if this man shows up, wherever you are in the service, go sit further back. During that time when the church opens up in worship, just begin to target him in prayer. Well, the individual calls me back late Sunday afternoon, and says, Russ, it happened again. The man showed up, and I did what you said. I stood in the back, and when I heard him begin to do this, and it seemed evil and seemed wrong, I began to pray against it. And the man instantly turned around and looked at me. He said, since that time, the man, you know, and then we found out later, the man's never returned. So I believe that guy came in purposely to do it. And we've met many along the way that can purposely do it. We've had it happen right in the middle of deliverance. I was in the car with a military monarch that had subpersonalities demonization. I knew something was there. I mean, I could feel the demonic stuff. So I began to inwardly pray against it. All of a sudden, out of their mouth, they just cussed at me and said, shut up. Well, inwardly, I started to pray even more, and they said it again to shut up, and they cussed. So I pulled off the road. I turned towards them, and I began to pray. I just thought we were going to get into a deliverance. All of a sudden, the subpersonality, demonized, highly demonized, come out and began to chant, which sounded Middle Eastern. And then I heard them calling on, they would be chanting in this language, and they began to call on the demon god Aromane to come and help them. And this was, I mean, it's the first time that ever happened. I mean, you know, I'm praying for commanding this demonic presence out, and yet this person who's highly versed begins to summon a highly powerful, Middle Eastern type demon god. The Arabs know about this god, this demon god very well. So I prayed stronger. They began to call on Aromane and speak in that language stronger. And then I just prayed boldly and strong and commanded this to be broken and commanded that no demons would show up. Well, the person finally grabbed their head, opened the car door, and they ran off into the woods, and they were gone for well over an hour. And Sean, we've seen that along the way. But I'm saying that part of the infiltration, where the Bible says in 2 Thessalonians 2 that Satan is going to come with pseudo or counterfeit signs, wonders, miracles. He can counterfeit. The real biblical gift is, the gift of speaking in tongues or languages was a sign gift and is a gift given, but it's directly counterfeited and used by the other side in their, not only in their rituals, but when they want to infiltrate the church. And again, I'm going to say it's done by design to come in to release curses, to release spirits, to curse pastors, to curse a congregational worship service. And the problem is, at first nobody knows. Maybe individuals begin to feel something, sense something, something's not right, but not until we really understand we need to discern and we need to check out whenever we think something is wrong, something seems wrong. We need to pray because the Spirit of God can give us discernment, and then pray against any kind of radical, infiltration that's going on like this.
Russ, we're running out of time, so I want to get as many questions out as I possibly can.
Sure.
What is the difference of someone who is programmed versus being possessed?
Well, sure. Programming is very similar to the idea, if you understand, being hypnotized, somebody on a stage. Mm-hmm. So you're literally going into a human person, and an operator, a hypnotist, or a person that's doing this on the outside is simply bypassing the main person's conscious, mind, and then imposing the creation of, some level of programming. So you could have, I would just call it physical programming done to a person in the sense of, in the best sense to understand it, is hypnosis. But when you split the person and program that sub part, it's permanent until they're healed, of course. And that can be done with or without demons, but it does open the door. Hypnosis, in my view, when you bypass the conscious mind anyway, you're opening the door to demonic presence, especially if the hypnotist or the person doing it has demons in and on them. There can be an easy transfer. Now, in demonization, you don't have to be programmed or split for, to get demonized. We've dealt with 5-year-olds and 50-year-olds, and, anybody that opens the doors can, the demons long enough can be completely possessed.
What opens those doors?
You can simply play the Ouija, play games with the Ouija board eventually, and use an occult object, use tarot cards, use anything that is considered an occult object, an object inspired by the demons in the first place. If you begin to practice it and use it, you can begin to open doors that way. If you begin to read things like the Satanic Bible, books on witchcraft, and begin to summon or call on spirits, they're going to show up. They're real. That can open a door. Any kind of practicing of anything into the occult world, mm-hmm. and usually it all starts off little by little, and it gets, that's how they start you off, little by little, and then, then it gets deeper, So any kind of occult practice, secret societies, you can open yourself up being a part of a secret society. You can open yourself up if you read what we call charged fantasy writings like Slender Man. Because I believe Slender Man is nothing more than a manifestation of the actual demon on the individual writer, writing writings that are supernaturally charged. They can affect the reader. Anybody that's writing what the Bible calls doctrines of demons, actual writings that demons inspire, well, if you begin to read them and begin to believe them, you're going to begin to open the door to the spirits that attend to those charged writings.
Real quick.
Music. Go
ahead now. Talk about the music.
Okay, real quick in the area of music, and here's where we do lyric analysis. Demons can inspire, a person to write a book. Demons can inspire a person to write fantasy writings. Demons can inspire lyrics, no differently. Just like a lyricist or a musician or an artist is writing, or even a painting for that matter. But if the lyrics are guided like in Slayer, like in old groups like Black Oak Arkansas or newer groups, if a demon inspires the actual lyrics, you're going to have what we call charged or demonized, demon-empowered lyrics that then are connected with the music, so that when they're played and sung, there is a sense in which it opens the door for demonic manifestation or engagement.
Talk about movies. What movies, other than Eyes Wide Shut, starring Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, what other movies that you know for a fact that reveal their secrets?
Well, I think an older movie called Spellbinder does. Spellbinder was actually, I was told by an actual victim to get this video, to watch it, because they helped produce it. So when I watched Spellbinder years ago, there's no question that is some of the tactics of underground Satanism, the real stuff, and what they do. So in the 90s, Sean, we did as our team, we don't recommend it, but we did try to take a look because we wanted to, really research. So we did look at quite a few films, and so I'm a person that in my research right now, I will look at from a distance at times, but I will do film analysis, lyric analysis, look at the origins, who's behind the development of the film, and see what the message is. We call it, an old theologian that we know, Francis Schaeffer, called it presuppositional analysis. In other words, you're analyzing what the screenwriter is actually putting out there. So if you look at Prometheus, they're pumping the idea of an alien race that initiated the human race, and it points to the Nephilim. You're going to find that numerous films have those kind of elements, and the ones that really avoid more than anything are like Emily Rose, the exorcism of Emily Rose, and many of the Last Exorcism, many of those films that show the actual real stuff, bits and pieces of the actual real stuff, need to be avoided. There was a film not too long ago that was more like a documentary where it was all about a demon getting in a house, demon getting with a couple, and eventually the demon killed the man, and it ended up that the coven in the end won. They won. Another one is Bless the Child. Bless the Child was a major film out there that showed some of the real type of secrecy, the organization, and the reasons for rituals in that movie, Bless the Child.
Wow. I mean, this is crazy. We can go on and on. Russ, I got to have you back again. Before we conclude,
sure.
When we come back, I want, because we can't talk about all of this stuff without providing some sort of solution. So I want to give you that opportunity, and also give you an opportunity to promote any books or literature, anything that you have, in addition to your website, shatterthedarkness.net. So hang tight as we come back with Russ. He's going to give us some solutions right after this. And we have a phone call. We'll try to get to that question as well. We'll be right back on Flow of Wisdom Radio. Flow of Wisdom Radio. I'm your host, Sean Anthony. The website is flowofwisdom.com. My guest, Russ Dizdar. Let's take a phone call. Quick question. 877-300-7645. We have Leroy in Atlanta has a question for Russ. Leroy, go ahead with your question.
What's up, Anthony? Actually, I got two. The first one, can your guest speak to the level of human sacrifice that is involved in Hollywood? And I usually look at it from an angle of, someone dies and then you see a star who's already a star, but then they start ascending. You can look at Liam Neeson. You can also look at Jay-Z when Aaliyah died. And Damon Dance, he has vanished as far as being involved with music.
Right. Russ, you want to respond to that? Any type of relevancy of
well, sure.
sacrifice?
Sure, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Listen, we need a really major expose. We do on the whole Hollywood. It goes all the way back to Laurel Canyon. It goes back to Charles Manson. It goes back to the Satanism that's been there for a long, long time. I mean, and then when you go to the music industry, we've got to understand Satan targets PowerPoints. You're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry that he himself, according to Ezekiel 28, had musical instruments built into him. Satan did. So you have this this grabbing of the talents, this grabbing and using of that field, and then bringing out the blatant level. So you're going to see more, like you've seen in the last number of years in the Academy Award, these award shows and so forth, music awards, where you're going to find blatantly done, ritually oriented. When you see Egyptian symbolism, you're looking at some of the most, some of the oldest type of what was used in ritual. So I always ask the question: who taught them the lyrics? Who gave them? When I see Keisha do what she does in some of hers, and so I have to ask first, how does it look like the real underground stuff? Yes. Does it promote the real underground stuff? Yes. Are they charged? In other words, is there demonic power involved to affect the crowd? Now, when I was a police chaplain, the officers would demand and want me to go to the Jar Arena where Marilyn Manson, Typo Negative, Danzig, and Slayer, and all these other kind of groups that came in. They wanted me to engage some of these individuals. I can tell you what I saw on stage. Individual musicians taken over demonically, wanting the crowd to be infected. So I'm going to say, Jay-Z and others, we're seeing them being used and then infecting tens of millions now with the symbolism, maybe the direct presence, and lyrics that may be charged directly from the demonic side.
Russ, we got to have you back on, and we could just talk about Hollywood, entertainment, and the music industry, because that's I'm sure we can expand on that a lot deeper, especially with your experience and my own personal experience, things that I've witnessed. But as we wrap up, we got about a minute or so. Russ, I want to give you, Leroy, I'm sorry for I got to cut you short, bro, but we got to wrap up. I want to give my guests an opportunity to promote and a solution. So take the last 45 seconds or so to promote whatever literature you have, if you got a book, upcoming speaking engagements, and more importantly, what are some solutions that you can share with my listeners?
Sure, Sean Anthony, thank you so much for having us on and being here. Thank you for what you do. I can tell you really clearly, Jesus Christ is the answer. He's God in human flesh. He saved me out of the darkness. I wasn't raised in church. He's real, and the other side is real, and there is repercussions, and we on being on one side or the other. God comes in Christ to forgive us, to give us new life, to give us eternal life, and Jesus can set us free from the demons of the darkness. We've seen his authority hundreds of times over the demonic realm. We've seen so many deliverances. So Jesus Christ is the answer. We need to really be able to take his message and his authority and prayer, helping individuals. Listen, Sean, my name for all those listening is Russ Dizdar. ShatterTheDarkness.net on the web. There's books and materials, hundreds of hours of training, all free out there for you. And but I want you to know that the answer is the brilliant, beautiful, incredible Jesus who gave his life on the cross. There's the power of God. There's deliverance. There's salvation.
Absolutely. Russ Dizdar, my guest. Thank you so much. His website again, ShatterTheDarkness.net. Russ, I'll be in touch with you, my brother. Thank you very much. I encourage you all to live life, get wisdom, and let it flow. I'm Sean Anthony. Peace.